During a family trip, I woke up on a small boat in the middle of Lake Powell. Just me and my 11-year-old daughter Sloane. No oars, no engine key, no other boats. My parents and my sister were simply gone like they'd been erased. In the backpack was a single sheet of paper pinned under a rock. 2 words that hit like a verdict. You chose this. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I counted what we had watched the sun and did the one thing a parent does when there's no one coming. I made a decision. 9 hours later, while my daughter was still tasting fear in every breath, my parents and my sister weren't calling search and rescue. They were calling their lawyers in a panic. My name is Kieran Ashford. I've kept this in my chest for a long time because it still hurts to say out loud. But if you're here with me, I won't have to carry it alone. Before I tell you everything, just comment hi or tell me where you're watching from. Sometimes knowing someone is listening is the only thing that keeps a story from swallowing you whole. And if you feel that tightness in your throat right now, please subscribe. Not because I'm chasing numbers, but because this channel is where I tell the truth I couldn't say at my own dinner table. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. I woke up to a heat that felt like it was burning straight through my eyelids. The sun was already high, too high, and the air was unnervingly still. It took me a second to realize I wasn't in a bed or a room or anywhere with walls. I was floating. I was on a boat. A small aluminum fishing boat drifting aimlessly in the middle of Lake Powell. And my daughter, my 11-year-old Sloane, was curled up next to me beneath a thin blanket, still asleep in her life vest. Her lips were dry, the bridge of her nose already pink from the sun. I sat up too fast and my vision wavered, but instinct took over before panic did. I scanned the boat. 2 bottles of water, 1 energy bar, a tiny first aid kit, a backpack I didn't recognize, a thermos that smelled faintly of something floral and too sweet, and under a smooth, deliberate rock, 1 piece of paper. I lifted the rock and unfolded it. You chose this. No signature, no date, no explanation. But in my head I could hear Della, my sister, say it in that perfect little knife-sharp tone she always used when she wanted to pretend she wasn't the one drawing blood. You chose this. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. My brain clicked into survival mode. First, I folded the note, smoothed every crease, and tucked it into the hidden inner lining of the backpack. Evidence. I'd seen enough cop shows and read enough court filings at my old job to know details save you when no one else does. I checked the engine. It wouldn't start. The key was gone. The backup oars were missing too. Both the usual side slots were empty and the cords that normally tied them down had been cleanly untied. There were no flares, no whistle, no emergency GPS, no spare paddle tucked anywhere. Whoever did this had time. They knew what to remove. I checked Sloane. Her skin was warm but not flushed, her pulse slow but steady. I sniffed the thermos again. Chamomile, maybe, but too thick. There was something else in it. I didn't drink it. I didn't throw it away either. I needed to remember everything. And then came the moment I didn't want understanding. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't someone forgetting us at the dock. This was intentional. I scanned the horizon. The lake stretched wide and quiet. No sounds, no motors, no cell service. I tried my phone anyway. Dead zone. Of course. Lake Powell's canyons and cliffs kill signals like fly traps. I sat back watching the subtle drag of the boat as it caught some slow, cruel current. We were drifting inch by inch, pulled away from wherever they'd dropped us. It wasn't panic that hit me then. It was the finality. Someone had planned this. They chose the exact location, the time of day, and the way to disable every possible form of contact or control. And they'd left me a message that blamed me. I looked at Sloane. She stirred, opened her eyes. "Where are we?" she whispered. "We're okay," I told her. "We're gonna be okay." I didn't know that yet, but I knew this: if I fell apart, she would too. I calculated. Sun position. How long we'd been out. How far we might have drifted. I made silent rules for survival. Hour by hour. Plan A, wait. Plan B, swim. But I wouldn't tell Sloane Plan B unless I had to. I remembered something else too. 9 hours. I told myself if no one showed up in 9 hours, that meant they weren't planning to come back at all. And when they panicked, it wouldn't be because they feared I was hurt. It'd be because they knew I'd make it out and talk. I looked out across the water, empty, blistering, endless, and made the first of many decisions. I would not die out here. And if I survived, I'd make sure every last one of them regretted what they did. 3 days earlier, I was sitting in the dark, hunched over my laptop, trying to make sense of a spreadsheet that refused to balance. The only light in the room came from the fridge, which I'd opened hours ago and never closed properly. Sloane had fallen asleep on the couch in her oversized hoodie, a bowl of cereal gone stale on the table beside her. My name is Kieran Ashford, 30-something, widower, father. I live in Mesa, Arizona, where the sun feels like a punishment 8 months a year, and money never stretches quite far enough. I used to work in small claims mediation. These days, I do gig work and freelance document review to keep us afloat. Life's been quiet since Mia died, my wife. Car crash. No warning. Just a Tuesday that broke the world. Sloane changed after that. She laughed, less watched people, more asked questions I didn't know how to answer. At night, she clung to old stuffed animals she used to call childish. She grew up too fast, like kids always do when grief replaces innocence. A few weeks ago, I inherited a plot of land from my late aunt in Pinal County. I didn't think much of it. Just desert and dirt. I figured I'd sell it cheap and move on. Then Della called. My sister hadn't checked in on me in months. Suddenly she was texting, calling, talking about family trusts, streamlining taxes and protecting assets. We should just fold your parcel into the family trust, she said. I asked, why the rush? She smiled through the phone. Just easier this way. For everyone. I wasn't buying it. A few days later, I got an email from a real estate guy I didn't know offering double the market rate. I hadn't even listed the property. That same day, Della casually mentioned that the county might be seeing a huge logistics project coming through data centers' industrial zones. She'd known. They all had. My land wasn't worthless. It was a gold mine. Then came the guilt. My mom Maris called during bedtime when she knew I'd be exhausted. You need a break, honey. Sloane needs air. Come with us to Lake Powell. Della followed up with pictures. A quiet rental house, a boat dock, calm water. No signal out there. Perfect to unplug, she said. Sloane saw the photos. She begged to go. Said she missed the feeling of a full house of cousins and grandparents. I said yes. For her. That same night, Della sent over the trust documents. Pre-filled. Signature line waiting for me. No pressure, but if you sign before the trip, everything's easier, she wrote. I texted back, I'm not signing anything until I know exactly why this land matters. No one replied. And that's when I saw it. A forwarded email left open on the family iPad when we went to dinner, from Della, to a family lawyer. Subject line, custody evaluation and legal capacity bereaved parent. They weren't just coming for the land, they were preparing to paint me unstable, unfit. And I still went on that trip, because Sloane deserved joy, because I needed to know what they were planning, and because somewhere deep down I thought maybe I was wrong. But I wasn't. The road to Lake Powell was long and quiet, with the kind of silence that sticks behind your teeth. Sloane sat in the passenger seat, counting license plates and laughing at a podcast she'd downloaded. I kept my eyes on the horizon and my jaw clenched tight, attention humming in the space between my shoulders that no amount of breathing could release. A message from Della came in just as we passed the welcome to page sign. Don't worry about the paperwork today. Let's just relax and enjoy the house. We can talk tomorrow. The words were sweet. Too sweet. Like something already rehearsed. I pulled into a gas station near the edge of town, needing a minute to collect myself. I took in the area, long stretches of land without any real homes, just brush rock sky. If someone got separated out here, really separated, there'd be no one to call for help, no one even to hear them scream. We arrived at the rental house near sundown. It was beautiful in the way vacation brochures are, perfect lighting, coordinated throw pillows, soft music in the background. But something about it made my skin crawl. Everything was too clean, too staged. Della greeted us at the door, polished and cheerful, her smile like it had been pasted on. Her husband, Troy, was all firm handshakes and just right eye contact. My parents, Harlan and Maris, floated in the background, calm to the point of eerie. Only Kinsley, Della's daughter, looked halfway real, curled on the couch, glued to her phone, and clearly wishing she was anywhere else. Della led us down a hallway to our room, set off from the others, and tucked near the garage. It smelled faintly of oil and forgotten things. "You'll have more privacy here," she said. I nodded. Took mental notes. Didn't push. Not yet. Dinner was a performance. Everyone played their parts. Harlan waxed poetic about family legacy and protecting what's ours. "We can't let outsiders take advantage," he said over grilled chicken. "That land should be in the trust where it's safe." Maris chimed in with practiced softness. "You've done so much alone, Kieran. Let us take care of this. For once." Della leaned forward with a kind of gentle finality. "It's simple. You sign and it all calms down. You don't and, well, that's choosing to isolate yourself. From all of us." Her voice echoed even after the meal ended. That phrase, choosing to isolate, felt like a loaded gun placed gently on the table. The next morning I noticed things, little things. Maris rubbing menthol oil into Harlan's shoulders in the kitchen like some kind of ceremonial prep. Della lining up cups of coffee, staging everything just so like it was all being documented. The mug handed to me was warmer than the others. I tasted it. Sweet in a way that didn't match the usual creamer she used. I said nothing, just kept the taste in my mouth like evidence. "Boat day," Della declared. She passed out sun hats like party favors. "We'll take 3 boats," she said, handing out keys. "You and Sloan take the little one, more bonding time." Troy grinned. "No phones, no distractions," he said. "Old school family time." I smiled, nodded. Inside, I felt the walls move closer. Out on the dock, the separation was too neat to be coincidence. Della, Troy, and Kinsley in one boat, my parents in another. Me and my daughter alone in the smallest. Della handed me a thermos. "Chamomile and lavender," she said. "For nerves. Thought you might want something calming." I hesitated. The scent was too sharp, too sweet. But Sloan looked up at me, hopeful. I couldn't make her feel like I was paranoid. I poured a little into a cap and let her sip it, just enough to soothe her stomach. I told myself that. We pushed off. The lake shimmered under a late morning sun. Sloan sat beside me, smiling, head tilted toward the breeze. I let myself believe it was just a normal day. But then Sloan yawned. Once. Then again. She laid down without a word. I reached for her and realized my own arms were heavier than they should be. The metallic taste in my throat bloomed sharp, my vision narrowed. I heard laughter across the water, then the distant thrum of a boat engine, fading, leaving. I tried to stand to reach for our bag. My hand slipped. My body folded. The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed me was the outline of Sloan, small and still beside me, and water everywhere. When I came to the light was violent. My mouth was dry and my head felt packed with cotton and static. But my first instinct wasn't panic, it was calculation. Sloan was beside me, curled up, still breathing. Her face was flushed, her lips dry. I shielded her with my arm as I sat up and took in everything. Water, sun, no other boats in sight, no houses, no land near enough to reach with a shout. I checked the supplies, 2 half-full water bottles, 1 energy bar, a first aid kit stripped down to the basics, and a thermos I now understood to be the reason I had lost control. Then the note. Still in my pocket. "You chose this." I folded it carefully. Evidence. I wouldn't let them steal the truth. I took inventory like a soldier preparing for siege. I divided supplies. 1 bottle for Sloan, 1 for later. I used my jacket to shade her, tucked the blanket around her legs. Then I looked at the engine. The key was gone. The cable that should have connected it to the battery had been unscrewed, not torn, unscrewed. I ran my fingers along the knots where the oars should have been tied down. The cords were still there, cleanly undone. This was no accident. There were no emergency flares, no whistle, no flashlight. Even the Swiss Army knife in the first aid kit was missing the blade. Someone had gutted this boat. Sloane stirred. "Daddy." I forced calm into my voice. "We're okay. You need some water. Just sip." She didn't ask where everyone else was, but I saw it in her eyes. She knew. I gave her instructions. Simple. Hour by hour. Drink when I say. Stay in the shade. Don't move unless I tell you. Then I studied the water. Still drifting. Always away from land. If they'd planned to scare me into signing papers, they'd be nearby waiting for me to break. But there was nothing. No shadows. No noise. Just the sun creeping higher. I started writing. On the back of a receipt I'd had in my wallet. My name. The date. Sloane's age. What we had. Where we were. What was missing. That I was leaving to get help. I anchored it under a bottle inside the boat, something for someone to find if I didn't make it. Then I gave Sloane her instructions. Quiet and slow. Stay low. Don't stand up. Don't put your hands in the water. Wave only if you see a boat. Never yell unless you see someone. She nodded. Didn't cry. Just stared at me like she was memorizing my face. I pulled her into my arms. "I'm going to get help," I said. "And I'm coming back. I swear it." The water was cold when I slipped in. Not shocking, but mean. It stole my breath and tightened my chest. I started swimming, not hard, just steady. The sun moved above me and the boat grew smaller behind. I didn't look back more than once. The second time might have cracked something. I don't know how long it took. But eventually the cliffs broke and I saw dirt. Then a road. I stumbled through the sand body, screaming. Then by some godsend, a beat-up pickup truck came around the bend. A man stepped out. "You okay, my daughter?" I rasped. "On a boat, lake. Need help." He helped me in without asking questions. His name was Gus. He radioed for rescue, drove me to the marina. The whole way there, my mind wasn't on the pain or the sunburn or what would happen next. It was on one thing. Now that I'd survived, what the hell would they do to cover it up? The room smelled like antiseptic and dried blood. Not in a dramatic way, more like a sterile fog that clung to the back of my throat. I blinked up at the ceiling light of the clinic, a square panel of harsh white that made my skull ache. My arms were hooked up to an IV bag. I was shaking. My lips felt cracked. But my brain, that had no choice but to stay awake. Sloane was curled on the cot across from me, wrapped in a blanket. Her cheeks were red from sunburn, her lips dry. She was sleeping shallow and uneven. I could still smell the lake in her hair. I watched her chest rise and fall and tried not to cry. I tried not to scream. Instead, I thought like a defendant. When Detective Rowan Briggs arrived, I was already sitting up, one hand still on the blanket covering Sloane. He introduced himself calmly, not like TV detectives. No dramatics, just efficient, direct. "I'm here to take your formal statement, Mr. Ashford," he said. "You ready to walk me through it?" I nodded. I walked him through everything. Slow, careful, exact. The invitation, the vacation house, the morning of the boat ride, the thermos, the fatigue, waking up in the middle of Lake Powell. Then I pulled the folded note from the sealed pouch in my bag. I held it with 2 fingers, careful not to smudge anything. "This was under a rock in the boat," I said. He read it silently, then looked up. "You chose this. That's the only thing on it. Yes, no date, no name, just that." His face didn't change, but I saw the flicker of awareness behind his eyes. He'd seen enough bad things in his job to recognize when something was planned. "I need to ask some follow-ups," he said. "Was the engine functional?" It had no key. The cable was unhooked, and the emergency tools that should have been on board, signal flares, whistle, flashlight, weren't there. Even the oars were gone. Just the ties left behind. He wrote as I spoke. Every word. Later he asked if I'd consent to toxicology. I agreed without hesitation. 2 hours later, the results came back. There were traces of benzodiazepine derivatives in both my and Sloane's systems, clearly ingested, clearly not accidental. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt gutted. They'd drugged us. and they drugged my daughter. I didn't say anything at first, just sat there while the room tilted. Not from the medication, but from something worse understanding. They had crossed a line I didn't even think they were capable of. The rescue team had collected the thermos and items from the boat which I'd pointed out. The lab pulled fingerprints from the cap and handle. Detective Briggs came back the next day with an update. Prints matched Della on the lid, Troy's on the base, no gloves. No way for them to claim the thermos just happened to be there. No way to walk that back. That's not a misunderstanding, I said quietly. That's intent. He nodded once. It's looking more like that, yes. Then he told me something that turned my blood to ice. Within 9 hours of your daughter being reported, found your family, Della, your father, and your mother, all contacted legal counsel, not rescue, not the police, lawyers. He let that hang. I stared at the floor. They weren't worried I'd drowned, I said. They were worried I'd survived. I knew what came next. They wouldn't wait for the legal hammer to drop, they'd start muddying the waters first. It didn't take long. A nurse brought me a form, something supposedly routine. An informal request to evaluate my psychological fitness and parental stability. Not official, not state-ordered, just submitted. By a lawyer, connected to Della. They were trying to paint me as unstable, a grieving widower, unfit, dangerous. The logic was obvious. If they couldn't erase the evidence, they'd erase my credibility. They'd use family court to do what they couldn't do on the lake, take Sloan away. I straightened up in the hospital bed and called my own lawyer, Elliot Park. He answered on the second ring. I gave him the short version. I need protection, I said. Medical records sealed, custody held, evidence preserved, and I need help building a case before they turn me into the criminal. He didn't hesitate. I'm on it. From that moment, I documented everything. I requested transcripts of the medical evaluation. I made Detective Briggs confirm every detail on the record. I built a list of what we needed: footage from the marina, rental records, receipts, chat logs, weather data, witness names. I didn't have time to fall apart. I'd survived the lake, but now I had to survive something worse. They were coming for me in the only courtroom that mattered. And I knew if I slipped even once, I'd lose my daughter. We got home 3 days later. Sloan hadn't said much during the drive. She just stared out the window, clutching her blanket like it was the only stable thing left in her life. Every time I glanced over, I saw the quiet trauma in her eyes. She'd flinch when the GPS spoke, startle when the blinker clicked. At night, she cried in her sleep. I tried to stay strong in front of her, made pancakes, packed school lunches like nothing had happened. But after she fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and reviewed every piece of evidence like I was preparing for war. Because I was. They moved first. A motion was filed through a family court attorney, one working with Della's team. They weren't accusing me directly, but the language was sharp concern over mental instability, impulsivity, and unusual behavior post-bereavement. They even leaned on the note from the boat, "You chose this," claiming it supported a narrative that I had orchestrated something elaborate for attention or worse. They were trying to frame me. Elliot and I responded fast. We submitted toxicology results, the rescue report, the photos of the gutted boat, the thermos, the note, the fact that the fingerprints didn't lie. We filed to protect Sloan's records, demanded that no outside evaluations be permitted without court oversight, and reminded the court that it was we who had nearly died, not the ones bringing the complaint. I sat Sloan down and gave her simple rules. Don't talk to anyone about the lake unless I'm with you. If someone asks questions, you say, "Please talk to my dad." That's it, okay? She nodded, her small face serious. Then Rowan called with a new development. "We've tracked the boat rental logs," he said. "We know when your family checked out and returned. There's a significant gap in reporting." "They didn't report us missing?" I asked. "No. In fact, there's no report at all from your family. Not until after you were found. Employees at the marina had remembered them. Calm, no panic. Even joked about the weather. That's what got recorded. No one seemed surprised you hadn't returned. That kind of calm. It wasn't natural. It was rehearsed." The next crack came from the least likely place, Kinsley. She was overheard by a counselor at school saying something odd. My mom told me not to talk about the tea. The counselor flagged it. Word got to Detective Briggs. The thread was yanked. Then a deleted message surfaced from Della's phone recovered from backup. Once he signs, it's over. Tomorrow it's done. That was the night before the boat ride. Now we had motive, planning, a timeline. And then came the shift inside their own camp. Maris stopped showing up to strategy meetings. She called in a private lawyer. She started asking about mitigating exposure. Harlan. He stayed quiet. No statements. Just a stone face behind a firm-paid defense team. It was clear they were cracking. Pressure exposes fault lines. One more push, and someone would flip. We filed our next move. A demand for forensic analysis on the notepaper ink, even the rock that pinned it. We requested receipts from the rental house. Security footage, parking logs, anything that could show planning. Rowan's tone changed on our last call. We've moved this to a felony investigation, possible endangerment of a minor, potential conspiracy. I closed my eyes. This wasn't about trauma anymore. This was about truth. It was going to get ugly. But I'd made peace with that. Because if I let them win, I'd lose Sloane. And no one was taking her from me again. The letter from the court arrived in a thick manila envelope, no warning, no phone call. Just a stamp, a signature, and a hearing date circled in red ink. Emergency custody hearing. Filed by Della Ashford. Request temporary separation of Sloane from my care due to mental instability and concerning behavior. I read it 3 times. Then I sat very still because I knew what this was. This wasn't about concern. It was strategy. The same day, Detective Rowan Briggs called with news from the other side of the battlefield. We're moving forward, he said. The DA's office agrees the case meets the criteria for child endangerment and conspiracy charges. Natalie Kerr's filing it within the week. 2 courts, 2 fronts, 1 daughter in the middle. It was a tactic divide and conquer. If they couldn't stop the criminal indictment, they'd win in family court, first paint me unstable and weaken my credibility before I ever took the stand. I didn't sleep that night. I watched over Sloane as she slept curled up on the couch, a cartoon humming quietly in the background. Her face still had that drawn, wary look, as if she hadn't felt safe since the lake. And now, they wanted to rip her away from me. At the emergency hearing, they came dressed in the soft colors of concerned. Della, in a pale sweater, set her attorney speaking gently, almost sympathetically. They handed over a packet of selective evidence-clipped messages I'd sent during my lowest moments after my wife died, testimony from a distant cousin who hadn't seen me in years, and a typed summary of concerning behavior that was vague and speculative. Most damning, they tried to spin the note from the boat, "You chose this," as if I'd written it. As if I'd planned some dramatic scene for attention. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I didn't flinch. They were waiting for an outburst, an angry denial they could point to and say, "See, he's unstable." I stayed quiet until it was my turn. Elliot Park stood first. His voice was clear, confident, no frills. "We have toxicology reports proving Mr. Ashford and his daughter were drugged. We have a police report documenting a tampered vessel, a boat stripped of oars and ignition keys. We have a rescue report, a physical note handled only by the suspects and our client, and a full chain of custody on all materials submitted into evidence." He dropped the stack of folders on the table like a gavel. "Whatever this is, it isn't concern. It's retaliation." I followed his statement with my own request that the court appoint a guardian ad litem to objectively assess Sloane's well-being, and if needed, I'd submit to a full psychological evaluation by a court-approved professional, not one handpicked by the people who tried to drug and abandon me. They didn't expect that. While the courtroom murmured, the forensic report arrived like a nail in the floorboards. The note, the one left under the rock, was typed on a printer matching the exact model used in Della's home office. The paper brand identical to the reams found in her family's rental property down to the watermark. Even worse, the thermos. It had fingerprints from both Della and Troy. So much for the "we didn't know" defense. Then Gus Herrera, the man who pulled me and Sloane from the water, testified via video call. He'd seen the family return to shore. They weren't panicked, weren't calling out, just sat on the dock, real calm like they were waiting for something. But it was Kinsley who fractured the story wide open. Through her guardian ad litem, her words were entered into the record. Mom told me not to talk about the tea. She said it was grown-up tea, not for kids. I felt sick to my stomach hearing that. Another child caught in the lies of adults. The final crack came from my own parents. In a closed-door deposition, Maris confessed. She admitted she knew the tea had something in it, said it was supposed to be a warning, a way to scare me into cooperation. It was just to make him nervous, she said, trembling. So he'd signed the land papers. We didn't think it'd go that far. Harlan tried to minimize his role, but once Maris broke, he folded too. We talked about it, he admitted. The idea was to isolate him for a day, make him see how alone he is. That's all. That's all. Ada Natalie Kerr laid the foundation down like a brick wall. Intent, collusion, risk to a minor, use of substances without consent. These are not misunderstandings. These are calculated acts. The court dismissed Della's petition to separate me from Sloan. Her attempt had backfired spectacularly. The guardian ad litem remained appointed, but not for my removal, for Sloan's protection from them. As I left the courthouse, I passed Della in the hallway. Her eyes were glassy. Troy refused to meet my gaze. This wasn't over. But the tide had finally turned. The indictment came through 2 days later. The charges: criminal conspiracy, child endangerment, unlawful administration of controlled substances. I read through the court summons, then walked into Sloan's room. She was coloring with the TV on in the background. I sat beside her. "Daddy," she asked without looking up. "Yeah, baby. You're not gonna leave me, right?" I kissed the top of her head. Never. I had survived the lake. Now I would survive the courtroom. The courthouse was colder than I expected, not physically but emotionally. The walls were too white, the chairs too straight. It didn't feel like a place where justice happened. It felt like a place where people waited to be proven real. I sat at the witness table, hand resting on a copy of the testimony I'd prepared. I wasn't here as a grieving father anymore. I was a key witness. Della sat across from me, Troy beside her. They weren't whispering, weren't making eye contact. Their lawyers did all the talking now. Sloan wasn't in the courtroom. I fought hard to keep it that way. If she needed to testify, it would be through closed session child protocol, away from all this. Natalie Kerr began the prosecution's case with what she called a simple motive: the land, the trust documents, the secret pressure campaign. Then came the timeline. Della knew about the proposed development months before I did. She had contacts in zoning, saw the maps. The land would be worth millions once the project broke ground. Emails showed her discussing it with her lawyer before she ever told me. Texts revealed she'd drafted documents, leaving only a blank signature line for me. One message read, "He doesn't have to understand it. He just needs to sign." That's what this was all about. Control. They couldn't force me legally, so they tried to pressure me emotionally. When that failed, they drugged me. The defense fought back with desperation. They accused me of fabricating danger. They claimed I was unstable, haunted by grief, prone to dramatic gestures. But Elliot and Ada Kerr struck that down with precision. They showed records of the unsolicited mental health evaluation request sent by Della's team weeks before the incident. It wasn't a diagnosis. It was an ambush. A court-appointed psychologist reviewed my history and testified in my favor. There's no clinical evidence of instability. If anything, Mr. Ashford has demonstrated resilience and emotional control under extreme pressure. Then came the timeline bombshell. Rowan presented the call logs. Within 9 hours of the incident hitting search and rescue records, Della had already retained 2 attorneys. There were no calls to police, no missing person reports, just a flurry of legal strategy. If they thought we were lost, why call a lawyer? Because they didn't think we were lost. They knew where we were. Then the final blow, my parents' full testimonies. Maris admitted she knew the plan included sedating me. Harlan confirmed they discussed isolating me as a method of forcing compliance. They weren't innocent. They weren't confused. They had just been counting on silence. The judge didn't blink. Della was found guilty on all counts with aggravating circumstances due to the involvement of a minor. Troy was convicted as an accomplice, lesser sentence, but prison time nonetheless. My parents avoided jail by cooperating, but they were placed under probationary supervision and barred from contact with Sloan unless a court reapproved it. It wasn't revenge. It was a line drawn in stone. After sentencing, I filed the final piece of paperwork. The land was placed into an irrevocable trust under Sloan's name, locked until she turned 25. It couldn't be sold. Couldn't be borrowed against. It was hers, and only hers. I dissolved every financial tie to my family. Closed shared accounts, changed legal contacts. I kept copies of everything medical, legal, digital, and stored them in a vault under my lawyer's supervision. We moved away shortly after. Not far, but far enough. A small home, quiet, simple. Sloan started therapy. I started sleeping again, mostly. Some nights she'd still ask me to check the doors. Some mornings she'd ask, "Are you sure we're safe?" And every time I'd say, "Yes, baby. We're safe." Because this time, we really were. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need revenge. The truth was louder than anything else. And now it belonged to us. I never thought survival would look like this, quiet, steady, and painfully ordinary. Not a grand victory, not a dramatic ending. Just me and my daughter waking up in a home that's ours, free from fear, free from control. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I refused to let them rewrite my story. I chose truth. I chose protection. And most of all, I chose her. Every parent thinks they'd do anything for their child, but you don't really know what that means until the people who raised you become the ones you have to protect your child from. I've told you my story because silence never saved anyone. If even one part of this hit something in you, if you've ever had to stand alone to protect someone you love, then I hope you know you're not alone. If my story meant something to you, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps more than you know, and maybe it'll help this story reach someone who needs it most. Thank you for being here.